and it's time for us to review the top front pages of local and international newspapers with Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning.
Good morning, Kechia. Good morning, Dean.
Good morning.
How are you today, both of you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
The lady in green. I am well. Very good morning. So good morning, viewers, and welcome to the program. To look at the local and international papers with us today, we will have Eniola Akinko. He's in our off-site studio, not set up yet. We'll have him a little bit later, but he is the chief international correspondent of the Africa Report. Let's start with this day newspaper right away. After meeting labor leaders, Tinubu says Nigerian workers deserve improved welfare, better wages. The president said, and I quote, "I pay attention to everything around me. A happy worker is a productive worker, and society depends on the productivity of the happy worker." But the president called for a realistic minimum wage. He says, you have to cut your coat according to your cloth. Wages have to be reviewed every 2 years, he says. And at the end of the meeting, no agreement was reached. Government is proposing 62,000 naira, while Labour insists on 250,000 naira. Okay, so I hear we have Eniola with us now. Eniola, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Okay, so we just talked about the meeting with the Labour leaders and the president. I mean, the president certainly struck a good tone during that meeting. He seemed measured and open to engagement, and he said the right things. And I want us to take a little bit of time to unpack his statement. He said, I pay attention to everything around me. But when you think about what was said, was it yesterday, the leader of the lawmaker in the House, Ahmed Lawan,
yes.
Senate, Ndume, he did say that the president is caged in Aso Villa and is far removed from reality and doesn't know what is going on in the country. So how would you juxtapose the two and kind of explain what is going on here?
Well, Ndume seems to have turned to an activist of sorts now. And, he has a grouse with the executive since his unsuccessful run for the majority leadership seat, which was given to Okwemi Bamidele. So a lot of what you're saying, too, are just outbursts. Yes, to some extent, too, he's right. But you won't expect someone who is the whip, the chief whip, to talk in this manner regarding the president who is a member of his party. But that aside, you were talking earlier about the minimum wage issue and all that. There was a meeting yesterday with the president had with the organized labor, and it also ended in a deadlock. They are standing their ground, insisting that it has to be 250,000 naira, and the president is saying no, it has to be 62,000. This minimum we're supposed to have, it had lapsed back in April 18 to be precise. And the president said in his speech on May Day that, they're going to have new minimum wage. It's going to be backdated to May. So May has gone, June has gone. We're approaching the middle of July already, and this thing hasn't materialized. Obviously, the organized labor too is spoiling for a fight, and they might embark on strike if no headway is made. So I don't really know. I mean, this is the first time in the history of Nigeria I've seen issue of minimum wage drag for so long, even till after the period when the last one had elapsed. I think personally, and this is a very, very personal opinion, I think that the demand of the organized labor is unrealistic. Nobody is going to pay you 250,000. You have so many companies that are declaring losses at this time. I think the only companies that may be able to pay that 250 are maybe the IOCs and maybe a few multinationals. But I don't even think states can pay it. I don't think the federal government itself can pay it. So it's unrealistic, and I expect that the organized labor will review, downwards their demands. That's what I think about this whole fiasco.
Yeah, you're right that the negotiations have dragged on for quite a long time. And it looks like it's not ending because after the meeting yesterday, they did not reach an agreement. And a lot of people have said that labor, of course, is unrealistic because, paying 250,000 naira wage, that's federal government, and then you talk about the state government. And of course, we're also discussing the private sector as well. They have to pay higher wages. In this economy, in these difficult circumstances, I don't know who is going to pay that. But let's look again at what the president said. He said a productive worker is necessary for a thriving economy. But when you look at Nigeria today, are we really a productive country? That doesn't seem to be the case. Whether you talk about the civil service, especially, there's little or no production there, Kechi.
I mean, what the president said really is true. You need good workers to have a productive nation. However, I don't even think the issue is really who's being realistic and who's not being realistic. I think the core issue here is trust. Nigerians just lack trust in the system, in the institution. It's not even just this administration. The president is saying, oh, you have to be realistic, or maybe we should even, why do we have to review it every 5 years? It should be 2 years, 3 years. Okay, now the 5 years has elapsed, and we've been reviewing this. This negotiation, like Eniola said, has dragged on. And remember at the beginning, I remember labor leaders were saying, look, the reason why we even, remember they started with 650,000 naira, is because when you're in negotiations, you have to start high. And so that as they're reviewing it downwards, it gets to a place where Nigerians can actually have, Nigerian workers can actually have enough disposable actual income, and then you have disposable income. Remember that we're dealing with high inflation in the country. The cost of everything is high, and if you're saying Nigerians should be realistic, maybe the government too should be realistic in their own spending on non-essential things that they've been spending and lavishing money on. And so it's just a case of walking the talk, really. If you're saying Nigerians should be realistic, we should be seeing that realistic nature in the policies and some of the decisions that the government is taking.
Certainly, you're correct that there is that component of trust, trust against lack of trust in the government. That has been on for many years, and it hasn't changed because a lot of people think that the government, as constituted, doesn't do the right things. And so we talk about the general expenditure, whether it's at the federal government level, at the state level, and at the local government level. People are saying that there has to be deliberate effort at making sure that you cut down those expenditures and see whether you can bring in more revenue. And then you have also a very functional government that doesn't go into waste. I mean, I don't know whether Labour will ever get this 250,000 naira. It doesn't seem, their hopes will maybe dashed indeed.
Kenya's president just recently sacked his entire cabinet because
we're coming to that story
he was
later.
blaming them. I'm just trying to get it to connect with what I want to say. He was blaming them for the taxes that led to the riots. I don't even know how, if we say labor is unrealistic, what do we say about government? Mm-hmm. The people are suffering. Over the years, not just about this negotiation now, over the years, the Nigerian worker has really suffered. He gets a pay that he doesn't get to be paid, and then goods, services, school, whatever, keeps on increasing in geometric proportions, and their salary remain there. So if anybody is unrealistic, really, if we talk about being realistic, it is the government. Like what I was in Kechi or Constance said, they go high, so there can be a balance. You come, it's bargaining. I go high, you come a little, but government has stuck to 62. And that is very unrealistic with what is happening in the Nigerian system. So it's to disagree to agree. That's what's important here. And then like Nkechi said, and like I pointed to Kenya, the way the officials of government are living leaves much to be desired in the face of Nigerians. Are they cutting expenses? Instead of cutting, are you hearing any government official say, okay, let's slice? Kenya did that. Have you ever had that in Nigeria? So these are the things that Labour looks at. And all the hangers on that gets paid offices that gets created that are not necessary and they're being paid. And they're saying, pay us this money. That's what is happening here.
Well, more offices being created. We just had the Ministry of Livestock Development. Yes, that's more expenditure on the part of government. Let's go to another newspaper. Let's look at New Telegraph. So New Telegraph this morning is telling us that the Supreme Court frees 774 local governments from governor's grip. It grants financial autonomy to the councils. It bars governors from dissolving democratically elected LGs. Allocations to be paid directly into LG accounts. No more caretaker committees. I mean, this has been a long, hard-fought battle for local government councils. I think this fight began from 1999. However, it was under the former president, Buhari, that he really went into it and decided there has to be an autonomy for local governments. So eventually, to the chagrin of governors and to the delight of local councils, they have won that victory. But a note of caution, some would say, this comes with huge responsibilities. No one expects them to go on and begin to squander resources like, how it happens at, whether it's at the federal or state levels. This autonomy that they have gained, it has to matter and count for the people that live close to the local councils. Eniola?
Well, I see this sort of as a victory maybe for the law, but not for federalism. So my argument is threefold. First of all, the law, that's the Constitution of Nigeria, guarantees autonomy of the local governments. There's a joint account which the states also operate. Now, the state's supposed to distribute it to the local governments without condition. But what we've seen is that a lot of these governors, they divert it. So the Supreme Court has now affirmed that, look, that should stop henceforth, which is good. But is it going to improve governance at the, what's it called now, at the grassroots? That's another kettle of fish. Abuja has been getting its own allocation regularly. Religiously, they've been paying it. That is the area councils. Abuja has 6 area councils, which are more or less local governments. What have they been doing with it? We've not seen anything major. The schools, the health centers, they are all in a very bad, derelict state. So I don't know how this is going to affect other states. And Abuja and Lagos received the highest allocation. Now, the law says, okay, no more, this new Supreme Court judgment says no more caretakers and all that, which is also good. 21 states currently are operating caretaker, they're using caretaker committees at local government level. So that's supposed to stop. But when it comes to federalism, the US that we have patterned our democracy after, it is 2 levels of government, federal and state. That's how it's supposed to be, federal and state. Now you've given these people some sort of autonomy, and you think that the governors are not going to fight back. That's not going to happen. I understand that yesterday the Nigeria Governors Forum already said, oh, they're already meeting, looking at how best to, forge ahead. Adamawa State is already filing a process too before High Court, trying to get an interpretation of what has just gone on, of the Supreme Court judgment. So, in theory, this is good in a way, but practically, I don't know how this is going to happen. Remember too that the legislative arm of government in the states also have, autonomy. They're supposed to be independent. Well, you've seen how the governors have been able to cage them and to control them. Any speaker that doesn't play ball or doesn't dance to their tune, you see how they are impeached at the drop of a hat. You're going to see that happening more now at the local government level. You see how the House of Assembly will be suspending local government chairmen. You see how councillors will be suspending local government chairmen that deviate from the master plan of governors. So, in theory, this is good, but I don't know how the implementation is going to go, because the governors, more often than not, are alpha and omega in their states. So, on paper, this is a good victory for them, but when it comes to implementation, I don't know how this is going to go. And lastly, is the process through which these local government chairmen emerge. you see that 99.999% of the time, it is the ruling party, the governor's party, that wins in every election in these states. In fact, most times you have opposition boycotting it because they already know that it's a foregone conclusion. So if the process through which this local government chairman emerge remains the same, if the Supreme Court has maintained it, even though, yes, that was not what was before the Supreme Court, but if the Supreme Court has maintained that same system, then you're still going to have stooges of governors emerging, and you're not going to really have any major difference. Lastly is how the Supreme Court was able to deliver judgments in this case. Everything was filed, judgment was delivered within 2 months. You have cases, people have not been able to get hearing dates at the Supreme Court. Some, you have to wait till 2027 to be heard by the Supreme Court. The case of VAT, value-added tax, which governors are challenging the federal government over, it has stalled at the Supreme Court since 2022. Personally, I have written to the Chief Registrar of the Supreme Court trying to get an update on that matter. 3 times I have written, and it has always hit a brick wall. You see that the Supreme Court is not serious about it. But this particular one, within 2 months, the application, everything, the judgment was delivered. So if the Supreme Court, I never expected them to be so Johnny on the spot when it comes to issues of state, but I'm really surprised how this one has really ended. So we'll see how it goes, but most likely these governors are already scheming to see how they are going to, frustrate this new judgment.
Definitely, the governors are going to be intervening in this. When you read the papers, you also see that the Lagos State House of Assembly has already summoned local government chairs because they want to understand what this really means for them. They want an interpretation. They want to see how they're going to be working with the local councils going forward. I mean, it has been state governors behaving like emperors. And, you also look at the instance of caretaker committees. This judgment is saying that we cannot have caretaker committees anymore. You have that in Rivers State and some other states subsisting. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of legal rigmarole going on. However, it's also good, like you said, for our democracy that we are testing the law. Because if you did not go to court to challenge what is on ground or what is happening, we would not have gotten here. So there's a lot that we're going to see going forward, Ndi.
It's said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. Small drops of water fill the bucket. The most important thing now is that this step has been taken. The next important thing to do from analysts and comments is SIEC. The talk is that even though this is fantastic and good, the governors control the SIEC, who conduct the elections in the state, and the chairmen are eventually stooges, so to say, of governors, so that you might still find the funds going back to the governors, or the governors bearing that on the chairman. So the next thing is that they're saying INEC should begin to take over the process of electing both the chairman and councillors. If that happens, then you will not have the chairman, for example, kowtowing to the governor of the state. So that's where the major problem is. On the caretaker rivers, their tenure has expired. So it's another thing to work out before tenure expires. There should be an election. If there's no election, it creates a lacuna. And that's why what is happening with the caretaker is happening. Then thirdly, we have a system where from the top to the bottom, the officials of government, our leaders, disobey the law. If we correct that system, there's no reason why they shouldn't hold through.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But there's also the case of local government councils should from now on begin to quickly draw up roadmap for transforming that level of government. Yes, I don't think people expect them to go on a victory party. It's actually a lot of work because at that level, governance is very poor. In fact, it is non-existent. There is another story that we're talking about today that will connect to the responsibilities of local council. So people want to begin to see action and difference being made, from this time
The ball is
onwards.
in their court.
Nkechi.
Exactly. Just like Eniola said, it's good for rule of law on paper, but like you said, nobody should be going on any victory party. It's more responsibility now on the local government chairs, because they've had this excuse of the governors, emperors over us, they're not giving us the funds and this and that. Now there's no excuse. And so the most important thing is, how do we now have that checks and balances, total transparency, accountability? If you've been given the funds, what are you doing with it? And it even boils down back to us, the media. We need to actually follow up as well and say, okay, look, this XYZ local governments, they haven't done this, they haven't done that. And if the whole point of elections, saying that the governors are the ones doing the elections, if you get your funds and you go and revert it back to someone, then you're going to be held accountable to that. So that's just the bottom line of this whole issue. Yes, we have that law now. What's going to happen? How are we going to keep them accountable for the funds?
Talking about accountability, in case the state governors are hardly accountable. Either is the federal government, so the local councils, who will supervise them? At that level, people tend to be unengaged and quite weak with regard to taking them to task. So you wonder whether this is going to be another free-for-all. Well, we'll be watching, but a lot of work to be done there. Let's go to the Guardian newspaper this morning. Guardian is talking about filthy abattoirs, meat processing spark dire health concerns. This is a special report by the Guardian. It speaks of deplorable state of abattoirs, lack of adherence to sanitation measures, transportation of meat in public transport. Authorities fail to see the dangers in poor handling of not only meat, other food items. One of the reasons why we decided to pick this particular article is that most times you have politics dominating the headlines of newspapers. Stories that have to do with health and development hardly make it there. So when you see such a story highlighted on the front page, such as this, it's important to discuss it because it is critical to the well-being of our country. Abattoirs are in terrible states, and that's why you wonder why we're not talking about it, especially in light of the cholera outbreak. It has to do with sanitation, poor infrastructure. You see the way that meat is usually dragged on the floor, and yes, hauled into public transport, very dirty vehicles, and then this lands on our tables at the end of the day, whether it's for lunch or breakfast. This is a health emergency, and we definitely need to do something about it. And the way I connect it to the local councils is, you wonder whether this is not part of the things the local government should be doing, managing, coordinating, reorganizing our markets, for better delivery. Eniola.
A spot on, doctor, on that. This is part of the duties of local government. If you look at other climes, I don't think I've ever gone through a meat market which is open, supposed to be enclosed, really. I know that Lagos State, at some point, Lagos State was doing it. They usually shut down, they close down abattoirs that are not adhering to certain health standards. But you don't see that happening in other states. You are very, very right that this is the duty of the local government. And now that they've been given more autonomy, let's hope that, because markets actually are under control of local government, they're under the authority of local government. Nigeria has, we're currently facing a cholera outbreak at this moment. So yes, you can connect it to this unsanitary behavior. Also, you know that Nigeria has one of the largest open defecation rates in the world. When you put all this together, you understand why Nigeria has some of the worst health indices. So yes, this is a wake-up call for local government authorities. Now that they've been given more autonomy, let's hope that they start to, pull their weight. But more importantly, too, is about enforcement. So each market, too, they have their own internal bodies through which they enforce sanitation. I know that in most markets, I think it's Thursdays that they shut down and they don't open until about 10 o'clock in order to clean up the market and all that. So that's supposed to be done, to ensure that, food items too are not poisoned or do not get bad, in the process of while they're in the market. So I think this is a very, very, very good write-up by Guardian. I haven't read everything, but yes, I hope that the local governments are watching and they take action on this. In markets too, markets also need toilets too. You say that you go to a lot of these markets, there are no toilets at all, and some of these markets, some of the traders have to, defecate in public and all that, and these are people that are selling the food that we consume. So this is a wake-up call for the local government, as I said earlier. Let them, begin to pull their weight now. Let them start with this. Let's see how that goes.
You mentioned that we have 6 area councils in Abuja, and they receive quite, significant amount of money. You go to Wuse Market, for instance. So we're not talking about only the abattoirs. We're talking about the food section generally, not only in Abuja, of course, all across the country. The food sections generally, when you walk through them, a lot of them, there's water on the floor. It's like a magnet for germs. They're not really properly cleaned. Yes, they shut down, maybe 1 day a week. I don't know how many days a week. Probably that is not sufficient. There has to be better, coordination or management of those markets, and we really, really need to do that quickly in kitchen.
Yes, while we say that the government has a critical role to play, citizens also need to be more proactive about their own health. At the end of the day, you're the one who's going to consume all this. Your children are going to consume all this. And so I agree with Eniola when he says those internal committees in the markets need to actually have some sort of proactiveness when it comes to this. We can't blame everything on government. You can see for yourself that this is not healthy. I mean, I guess it's common sense. I hope so. And so this really, citizens need to take charge when it comes to their own health, really.
Well, there are also market associations, so...
That's the citizen. That's not really government at the top level,
right,
if that makes sense. So
no,
I'm
just saying that there are market associations, yes, apart from the citizens, that come together to sort of handle their affairs at the market level.
And also give that public awareness and campaigns and tell these people that, look, you need to, there are ways to do this. You need to, what you're selling, it's food. It's very, very, how do I put it? It's very sensitive. So they need to understand that, and that public awareness is very important.
I think you touched on that area that what needs to be done here really is that you're dealing with people who over the years have an attitude. They believe that, it's just like human beings ordinarily. Some people don't just care about the way they live, how they dress, how their house is. So I think what should be done here is to reorientate them, change their attitude, organize lectures for them. It doesn't have, you wouldn't do it in English, or you can do it in the local language. Get them together, begin to reorientate their thinking of the need, because in the first instance they carry these meats, they wear it, just like mechanics. Somebody says you can't differentiate between a mechanic and a madman, but there are mechanics who dress so good even at job because of the kind of job they do. So because of the kind of job these people do.
Be careful. You're looking for trouble. Mechanics are mad people.
I didn't say they're mad people. You're saying what I did not say. So that's the point. I think they need a reorientation, teaching, a culture, because this is a culture developed over the years. So they need their brain tweaked to understand that you can do it this way, not particularly continue on the bent that you've been going. I think that's what will handle this problem.
Well, health monitors as well. Health monitors need to do their job.
Regulations.
Yes. So Vanguard newspaper next. We're going to be looking at the story on executive order. Drug makers seek clear timeline. Stable naira for 70% production.
Let's go on break.
All right. We'll keep that on pause and get back and continue. We'll be back. Glad to have you back. We're still on the paper review with Constance and Eniola in our offset studio. All right, over to you.
Yeah, so we're on Vanguard newspaper before we went on break. Let's look at it again. Executive order, drug makers seek clear timeline, stable Naira for 70% of production. They maintain that non-implementation hampering companies placing order on importation of raw materials. Several days after the president signed an executive order, companies want to see next steps. They say if the value of the Naira is not fixed, achieving 70% of local drugs will not happen. I mean, the president signed this executive order a few days ago. It was aimed at boosting local production and at the same time reducing the cost of drugs. We've had so many stories over the last 1 month on the skyrocketing prices of not only goods but drugs as well, because to import the raw materials for production has been difficult but very expensive. But apart from that, you also have the fact that we don't produce a lot of drugs. So what the president is trying to do is to sort of make sure that we can produce more drugs, we can expand the market so you don't have the problem of importation of the majority of what we use locally for a country as big as this. However, the drug manufacturers are saying that signing an executive order is one thing, then quickly putting it into action is another. So they want to see the president running, well, his team running, quickly on this, Eniola.
I noticed something when that paper flashed. There's a headline at just above the headmast, where the CBN governor is saying, look, inflation, we are suffering for ways and means loan. And it's directly, in a way too, directly connected to the main headline itself. Now, at the time when this executive order was conceived back in February, I think the exchange rate was about 1,200 naira to the USD. Today, it's about 1,550 to the dollar. And so, even with this executive order that has been signed, you're not going to see a significant drop in the cost of medicine. That means that the purpose itself, the purpose for which that executive order was conceived, is already being frustrated. In that, the story by Vanguard, I think it's the MD of May and Baker, Mr. Ajada, was complaining that, look, unless we can get the exchange rate to come down to a bit in favor of the Naira, it's going to be almost business as usual. So Nigeria really needs to work on its exchange rate. You really need to get the Naira stronger. That's the only way that this thing can actually benefit anyone. Because you're going, what is the executive order? It only says that, okay, VAT and import duty should be suspended for raw materials and for equipment. So if the Naira continues to fall, it means that we're going to be, it means that this executive order is not going to make any impact at all. Also, look at the fact that abroad, you also have inflation abroad as well. So by the time you import raw materials from there, it's also going to affect Nigeria. We're going to import inflation as well. So what this executive order sought to achieve, at the end of the day, it might not even achieve anything. If the Naira continues to fall, it means that Nigeria will continue to pay more for these drugs.
A grim picture for everyone when you really analyze the state of things. Apart from the fact that there is that instability in foreign exchange, there's also the issue of scarcity. And that's partly one of the reasons why quite a number of multinationals started exiting the country, because it was difficult to continue to deal with this uncertainty all around in the economy. I mean, where do we go from here? Nobody knows what to say. Where do we go from here?
Two things here. One, they want the manufacturers of these drugs is saying they're now on queue. They're waiting. The government hasn't engaged them. It's one thing to do the executive order. It's another thing to implement it. Nobody's engaging them. If it's not implemented, what most of them are doing is to wait so they can benefit from it. So if they don't engage them, they keep on waiting, and then there'll be no drugs, there'll be scarcity. And then secondly, they talk about fixing the exchange rate. And that's why commentators over the period said, why did we have to go and float a naira? It's causing a hell lot of a problem. So these are the two issues here. The floating of the naira has led to the vagaries of the exchange rate not being steady, going up and down, and going higher and higher, and that affects the cost and then implementation. These are the two things that the manufacturers are harping on here. If these are done, then they're good to go. Well,
brief thoughts on that, Nkechi.
Yeah, just to buttress the point of Venola, when he brought in what the CBN governor was saying, if you also look at the New Telegraph, CBN governor keeps talking about sustaining the MPR hike. He says that has been helping stabilize Naira. But when you look at it, raising interest rates, yes, it's used to fight inflation. However, it also hampers business growth. And so you have these pharmaceutical companies already struggling with the currency instability, finding it even more challenging to now get or secure affordable financing. So the combination of a volatile naira, high borrowing costs, and reliance on imports, so companies that are opting to may now even opt to import the finished goods rather than investing in the local production that we are trying to increase. And so it's just a lot of different factors. However, that executive order, like India always says, one step, we just need to take a lot more steps.
Right. Daily Trust, shall we pull that up? We're looking at the story in Daily Trust. Ex-Power Minister Maman remanded in correctional center. The former Minister of Power, Saleh Maman, is being tried for alleged 33 billion naira fraud. He collapsed in court yesterday, but he wasn't allowed to go home. Reports said he was frail and he's in Kuje prison as we speak. Yeah, one of those things. He's pleaded not guilty to a 12-count money laundering charge by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. I mean, the general consensus in Nigeria today is that this type of things need to be stopped. Well, it is an allegation. It hasn't been tried. It hasn't been found guilty. But so often we have cases, I mean, several uncountable cases of people leaving public office, and there are allegations of graft, of fraud, of misappropriation of the money and the funds that belongs to everyone. No country runs and can't survive on this kind of anomalies that are happening, you know, quite often at every level of government. And briefly.
Oh, yes. You know that there was this popular refrain by the former president that where is the power? You know, he was talking about how that's the allegation anyway, that $16 billion was spent on the power reforms and we didn't see anything. You have a former Minister of Power too, Agunloye, who is currently in court as well, facing allegations of graft in the power sector. Of course, as you said earlier on, nobody has been convicted, so we can't really blame them or say that, oh, this is why there's rot in the power sector. But it's something that needs to be discussed as well. Now, Maman's fainting outside the courtroom. It could be theatrics, but also we've seen in the past that some people, when they are called to give account of how they spend public funds, they just suddenly get ill. You remember that 2 weeks ago, Deputy Comptroller General of Customs, died at the National Assembly while giving account of the money that was allocated to the agency. You had Aburi Shade, a former Minister of Education too, who fell sick at the ICPC, and then he started to shake. He got feverish, and they were forced to release him. He died soon afterwards as well. So we've had situations where people just fall ill when they are called to account. Doesn't really mean that they are guilty too. We have to understand too that a lot of big men in Nigeria, their health is not actually very good. Something we noticed during the COVID-19 pandemic when so many of them passed away. So it's something worth looking into, something worth discussing anyway.
Right. Let's go to Daily Graphic. We're going continental now. Daily Graphic is from Ghana. We're looking at the story, making cement pricing transparent. Stakeholders to manufacturers. Well, Ghanaians here are complaining about the rising cost of cement. At a forum, they told manufacturers to disclose their price build-up. This will help consumers understand the frequent adjustments to price and therefore address these concerns. There's a proposed legislation for cement price reporting, and the Ghana Chamber of Construction and Industry organized that meeting. It was also attended by the Chamber of Cement Manufacturers Association. I mean, it's evident concerns about the high cost of literally everything, whether it's regionally, continentally, and globally. Everything is rising. It's the same in Nigeria. People have complained, lamented severally about the high cost of cement. You know, there is a lot of use or demand on cement due to construction. But the price, even when it is produced locally, is quite high. And so I don't know how a legislation will work. It says this legislation will at least make it transparent in the sense that manufacturers will be required to show us what it costs to produce, you know, maybe a bag of cement, so we know whether you're ripping people off. What are your thoughts on this, Eniola?
Well, the inflation rate in Ghana is even lower than in Nigeria. So I think we are the ones that should be complaining more. We have the largest cement manufacturers in Africa, and we're paying more, you know. I think it was last year that the chairman of Buhari, that's Abdul Samad Rabiu, said, oh, they're going to crash the price of cement to, was it 3,000? He said, now I can't really remember the exact figure. And then when that didn't happen, you know, they said, oh, they started making some excuses. The point here is this. There's general inflation, especially on the continent now. And I don't think cement is also going to be, I don't think cement is immune from that inflationary trend as well. Them making a law could actually discourage investment into that sector, because most private businesses won't complete the regulation. They want to be able to sell at the market value. So by the time you start introducing laws or regulations that, oh, you cannot sell beyond this point and all that, it could frustrate businesses. And Ghana is in desperate need of foreign investment at the moment because their economy is not looking good at all. So yes, it's sort of looks like what is going on in Nigeria. I remember too that the Minister of Housing was even threatening that, look, we're going to open our borders and allow imports of cement if the local producers do not want to reduce their prices. You know, they're saying that, and the producers were saying, look, everything has gone up. Yes, we produce here locally, but the cost of equipment, you know, cost of so many things, of the components that we use in this production has also risen. So there's really nothing we can do. The way food has gone up, the way everything has gone up is the same way cement too is going to go up.
I mean, the impact is far-reaching because it's not only the cost of cement, it also affects the prices of the construction of the houses, sure. And then the cost of selling the houses, or if you are renting, you know, it becomes really expensive all over Nigeria today. In Abuja, for instance, if you're renting now, houses that used to, maybe a two-bedroom in Wusetu that used to cost 2.5 million naira. You go now, it's like 8.5 million naira, and they tell you the cost of cement, the cost of building materials, everything is through the roof. It's a difficult word. Quickly, Nkechi.
Yes, I think the intention when it comes to the story on the Daily Graphic is really to protect consumers. However, they have this issue that imposing like some sort of price control without addressing the underlying factors could then lead to unintended consequences such as shortages and black markets. And then they're saying that, look, transparency is key. They're basically recommending that cement manufacturers publish their factory prices, breaking down of cost of productions, raw material, energy, labor, just to enable like retailers and consumers understand that pricing structure. And I don't even want to comment on the housing crisis going on in Nigeria right now. That one is a long story for another day.
Yeah, India, I'll come to you, but let's go to the Nation newspaper. Nation is from Kenya. I don't know if we'll have it, but there's a good story there. Why Ruto's entire cabinet had to go. The president yielded to pressure to fire his entire cabinet. The youth made this demand due to what they regarded as poor performance. Many say President William Ruto is yet to fulfill most of his campaign promises. I mean, unprecedented times in Kenya, what is happening and what the youths are being able to achieve with this sustained protest over time. I mean, the President, William Ruto, is listening. And yesterday, as it's been said or has been reported, he has fired his entire cabinet. And they're even saying that it's not enough. There's pressure on him to throw in the towel and just resign. This is the people taking back their power and trying to hold their leader to account. Can this happen in Nigeria, Ndi?
You see, what is happening in Kenya, it's not just about Nigeria particularly, other African nations. This is a listing. I doff my heart for William, you know. Can you imagine the entire arsenal of ministers or commissioners at state levels being sacked? I mean, Labour was talking about the fact that tariffs were increased. That's one of the things, I hope we're not forgetting it, that they're you know, in talks with government about. And on top of it, you go on and increase the tariff again. So it's like the people are taken for granted. The people are not listening. In some quarters, the comment is that Nigerians are docile. And because the leaders understand this, they do anything they want. And they get away with it. Remember what did they call it? The riots.
The Arab Spring.
The Arab
Spring.
One thing leaders here must be very careful about. You can continue to push somebody. If he gets to the wall, he will turn and chase you. It's high time the Nigerian leaders stop taking Nigerians for granted. Watch what is happening in Kenya. That's a very good example of how leadership should be.
I mean, Nigerian youth did
and it was provoked by the people.
Nigerian youth did try this during the NSAS protests, although they didn't quite get there. But you can see how this is so, I mean, it's not that organized. They don't have one leader. It's just, you know, people saying, we're fed up, enough is enough, and you absolutely cannot take us for a ride. Eniola?
Sure. The youth of Kenya are making a very big statement, what they've done. And I mean, so many people thought this thing would just blow over after a week, and we've seen it go on and on and on. About 21 people who have been killed or so. You have a Sunday school teacher who was shot in the spine. He's never going to walk again. These are the people that are giving inspiration now to this protest. On one occasion last week, when the military fired tear gas, one of the placards read that, look, this is not tear gas, this is perfume or fragrance. This is the fragrance of change. That was how they defined it. They said tear gas is fragrance of change. And so these guys are, you know, they've seen this. In fact, the resistance from the government has given them impetus to continue. Now they are asking for the outright resignation of Ruto. And Ruto has been trying to, he's made some concessions. He scrapped the office of the First Lady, you know, reduced costs here and there, reduced salaries. They're saying no. Now he has dissolved his cabinet. I think it's only the Prime Minister that remains there. Yeah, but these people are saying, no, you must go. You must leave office. They have this spirit of, you know, consistency too. Nigeria, and then they're more united than ever. In Nigeria, what we've seen in the past is that when you have this sort of protest, it seems to have some ethnic slant. They try to find a way to divide the people. So there's really no protests I've seen in this country where it involves every part of the country. The moment maybe it is someone who is from your region that is the president at that particular point in time, you see his kinsmen or people from his state or his region saying, oh, we cannot join this protest, you know, this is being done to remove our brother, to frustrate our brother and all that. It happened during the NSAS. When there was the NSAS protest, you had the counter protest, which was the Secure North. Even if you look back at June 12, a lot of protests didn't take place in the north. It was mainly in the south too. Even though, yes, you had some northern elements joining, but the epicenter was Lagos. And so, you know, if the people are not united enough, they will not be able to hold the government accounts. You will not see such protests succeeding. So there needs to be national cohesion for this sort of thing to work.
Well, thank you, Anel. I mean, we had one more story, but that's the much we can take. Yeah. We've run out of time.
All right, thank you so much, Eniola, there, and of course, Constance. That's it on today's Daybreak. I am Ndi Amogu thanking you. Next is The Morning Show.
It's a full day ahead, and every moment matters here on the Arise News channel. Thank you, Dr. Ikoku. Thank you, Mr. Eniola. My name is Ikechi Nana.